if you want to go ahead and kick it off.
You bet. So I'm Kathy McCarty-Lake. Work for LARPD as a recreation coordinator for senior services. And the gentleman that just was talking a moment ago is our supervisor for the department and community outreach supervisor, and that's David Weisgerber. So we welcome him. He's helps us get all these fun things put together. And then we also have Richard Finn, our City of Livermore historian that loves to do research on interesting things about Livermore, and we love to hear it. So he's come up with one about all the schools that used to be here over the years and what became of them. So it's going to be interesting for me because my parents were both school teachers and administrators here in Livermore. They moved here in like 1951, and I was actually born and raised here. So I remember some of the schools that we'll be talking about, and I'm sure I don't know all these details that Richard has. So we'll be interested to hear from you as well, how much you remember about these schools and how long you've lived here. So I guess we'll just kick it off. Richard said he has a full bunch of information for us. I do want to say that if you have questions, there's at the bottom of your screen, you'll see the Q&A bubble there. Just click on that and you can post your question, and then one of us, David and I, will be fielding those questions. And when Richard takes a breath, we'll ask him for an answer. So, okay, so we have 29 people on board right now, and we're expecting 41. So we're going to go ahead and kick it off and welcome Richard Finn.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, let's see if I can get this started. And we'll go to slideshow from the beginning. Okay, does that show up for you then?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Whoops, it's not from the beginning. What happened here? Okay, there's the beginning. Okay, thank you everybody for coming. We're going to talk about, well, this talk started, it was going to be about the old country schools in Livermore. But as I found information, I thought, wow, we better talk about all the schools in the early days of Livermore and how they all integrated with each other, worked together, or didn't work together over the years. And I would ask if you know anything about these schools, their history, or know people that went to any of them, if you would have them contact me, because this is going to be an ongoing project, and I'd sure like to know more about all these schools. So let's get going. We've got a lot of ground to cover. We're going to go all the way from downtown Livermore out to, let's see, as far south as the Arroyo, Del Valle Arroyo. There was a school there. Up in the hills above Mines Road, there were schools. Then, of course, out to Tesla and Carnegie, and then Mountain House and Altamonte and May School, Inmate School, and then back to town. So that's a lot of miles we're going to put on. So let's get going. Okay, the first school we found out was built, I don't know exactly when, but it was in the late 1860s, and it was near Portola Ave, what's now Portola Avenue, and south of 580. In that general area was the school. Now we do know in 1869 it was moved to School Street, and there was a second building built at the first site, and it also was moved at that same time. And I said, School Street, where in the world is that? Well, it turns out School Street actually is a street on the east side of what is now Livermore High School, still called School Street.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, William Mendenhall then donated land on 5th Street, where the 5th Street School is now. And both of the old school buildings that were on School Street were moved there to the new site at Fifth Street in 1873. And you'll see a lot of these schools were moved. A lot of houses, as we know, were moved in the old days. Don't see that anymore, but for some reason in the old days, they like to move things all over the place. And it seemed like a lot of work to me, but that's what they did. Okay, now let's go over to College Avenue. And on College Avenue, we had the Livermore Collegiate Institute, which sometimes is called the Livermore College. And it was in operation from 1870 to 1892. Now, it was a private school, so you had to pay to go there. So that eliminated a lot of people that lived here in the valley. Now, in 1883, the school had 50 students, and it was ranked as one of the best schools in the entire state of California. It closed in 1892 after the Livermore Union High School was opened. And the building that we show in the photograph was later used as part of the Livermore Sanitarium. Now, in 1876, a new building was built at Fifth Street, and that was named in 1891, they started calling it the Livermore Grammar School, and you'll hear that referred to a lot. The next picture I have shows what was on a postcard then, and they called it the old grammar school that we used to go to. Okay, now I found that in July of 1903, a Civil War veteran by the name of Charles William Bradshaw built new stairs. And Civil War veterans that lived in the valley are another interest of me. And we've found so far over 100 Civil War veterans have lived here in the valley. I don't know, most of them, probably most of them had land up behind what's now Del Valle Reservoir that they got government grants. So Charles Bradshaw was a Civil War veteran then, one of many that lived in our area. Okay, here's a picture of the graduates from the Livermore Grammar School in 1905. And you can see it's a pretty good group. In 1904, we found there were 456 pupils at the school. So it was really growing there. Okay, as we said, the Livermore Union School then, Union High School, opened in August of 1893 with 24 students. And people ask, well, where was that? Well, it's where the Bothwell Rec Center is now, between 7th and 8th Street, between G and H, like I said, where the Bothwell Center is in that whole park area there. And it was used as the high school then until the new school on Maple Street was built in 1930. And I might say the Livermore Union High School was the first Union High School in the state. And it started in 1891 as a high school meeting in the old Livermore Grammar School. And here's another picture of it. This one is from 1896. As we said, in 1893, they had 24 pupils. By the next year, 1894, it had jumped to 66 pupils. So the word got out and people started going to school. And you remember in the old days, there were few people, percentage-wise, that went past the 8th grade. 8th grade was kind of considered, hey, if you got an 8th grade education, you can get a job anywhere, and that's just lovely. So here's a picture we have of the Livermore High class of 1896. And you see there's only 6 students. So that's the graduating class. Some of them, Bradshaw, I think her father, if I remember right, was a Civil War veteran. Alward went on to be quite a bicycle racer, very famous. And let's see, Callahan, super well-known name here in the Valley, Rathbone and Rathke. So all those names are known to us as part of our Livermore history. Okay, the next picture then shows the Livermore High School faculty in 1904. And you see there were a total of 4. Now, I don't know if the principal taught or not. I'm pretty sure the vice principal, assistant principal did. Okay, now the next picture is kind of interesting. It's a picture of the Livermore High baseball team in 1903. And look how many baseball players there are. Now, don't count the little boy in front who's the bat boy. And you say, wow, they hardly had enough for a team. Okay, now let's look at the next picture, and that's the football team. Now, there aren't enough people for the team, unless some of those that aren't suited up were also on the team. But if you need 11, they didn't quite make it.
Where can we get those
in
uniforms?
1913, St. Michael's Academy opened, and they had 30 students. And we found the first graduating class was in 1915, and that had 11 students. So that's on Maple Street. And let's see, if I remember right, that was the building that was torn down, I think, just a couple years ago when the new building was put up. Okay, now let's go and talk about country schools. And the first country school we're going to talk about is the Wilson School, which is one of the oldest, and it opened in 1875 and went to 1890. And people say, well, where was it? And I'm going to try to show you where all the schools were. If you go out Mines Road, it's fairly flat. Let's see, and turn off now. Don't go up the hill to Del Val. Turn off on Old Mines Road. Keep going. It's still fairly flat until you get to this bridge. And this bridge then crosses the Arroyo Mocho. And then on the other side, it starts to get really steep. Okay, it's my understanding that right in this area here is where the old Wilson School was. And again, until 1890. Now, when that school closed then, all the students went to Mocho School, which was closer to town down Mines Road. And you might ask, well, who donated this land? Well, we happen to have a caricature of him, and it was Peter Wilson, who came to California as a 49er, and he lived then here in Livermore until he died. And he was 4 days shy of being 100 years old. And he donated the land, like many of the farmers and ranchers did. He donated the land so that his children could go to school. Otherwise, they were just way too far from any schooling. Let's see, the next picture then is Mocho School. Now, it's hard for me to know, but I'm pretty sure this is the second Mocho School. And I'm not sure where the first one was. I don't know if it was here or closer to the Wilson School. But there definitely was a school here before 1890. And then this school finally closed in 1945. Now take a really good look at this building. Have any of you seen this building before? Just kind of think about it. And think about what if you wanted to move that school. Look at it, it's on a very steep slope. And so how would you move that, and where would you move it to? So let's look at the next picture, and that shows the existing foundation. This is the picture I took not long ago before it turned all brown. And the school then was on top of that concrete foundation. Now down at the bottom, you can see there's a wall along here. Just on the other side of that wall is the Arroyo Mocho. And it hasn't happened for a while, but since we've lived on Mines Road, it has flooded over the years. And down below then is there were sheds and watering troughs for the horses. but the school then you reach from the front door was on Mines Road. Okay, did you remember? Let me go back. Okay, you remember this building then? Take a good look at that. And now let's go over to O Street. You recognize that building? And that is the Mocho Schoolhouse. Mm. Now, looking on Zillow and Redfin and some of the other online house sites where they estimate what your taxes are and value of your house and all that, they say this was built in 1910. And it could well have been built in 1910 on Mines Road, but it certainly was not built here in 1910. No question about that. So that's one of the two schoolhouses that I know that still exist. And the only one that I know of that's in any good shape at all. Okay, now let's go over to Del Val Reservoir. And I'm not sure if this is underwater or just slightly above water, but we know about where the Arroyo School was. Well, it went by a lot of names. The official name, I think, was Arroyo Valle, but also it was called Arroyo and Bayou and Bayo and Valle and so on. Now, they never had very many children at there. It was just too far in the back. Again, a lot of Civil War veterans lived up in the hills behind, but by the time they got there, most of them didn't have young children to go to school. Okay, now look at this building, and this picture then is identified as being at the Arroyo School, but so is this next picture identified to be in Arroyo School, and it definitely is not the same building. The siding's different, the windows are different, and all that. And the first picture doesn't give us enough clue to know where it was. And sometime I'd like to make a big picture of this, a big copy, and go out to Del Val and see if I can figure if there is such a place. And it kind of does look to me, looking south then towards the N3 cattle ranch, there's a hill that kind of looks like that. Whether it is or not, I'm not sure. Okay, in this picture, you see how tiny the school was. Now, most of the schools, I think we said, the typical school had 3 windows on the side, 2 windows and a door in the front. And this certainly does not meet that. And some of the other schools we're going to show you very soon don't either. So here's the school. There's the outhouse. And then almost all the schools then had sheds where the horses could stay when it was raining or very hot. Okay, this is the school teacher. This picture was identified as the school teacher's cabin at Del Val. Boy, it doesn't look like a luxurious place to be. And you remember in the old days, to be a school teacher, you had to be female to start with, and you could not be married. Once you were married, you're out of there. You were fired. Okay, now here's a school that I didn't know anything about until I was doing a little research. A lot of you know at the end of Del Val Road was the old Arroyo Del Val Sanitarium, which took care of tuberculosis patients from 1918 to 1960. Now, part of that was the Del Val Ranch School, and that was for children. The Del Val Ranch was for children then that had tuberculosis. And I found it opened in 1924, but I haven't been able to find out when it closed. And as an interesting sidelight to our family, it turns out my mother's oldest sister was a patient at Arroyo Del Val, and they lived up in Sebastopol, and it took them about a day and a half to get from Sebastopol down to the ranch here in town. Because you remember in those days, no bridges, had to take ferry boats and all that. It was a long, slow process. And of course, the roads weren't very good either. Okay, the next school we're going to talk about is a site that most of us won't be allowed to see because it's way inside of private property, and that's the Vista School. Now, the Vista School opened in 1882, and it closed then in 1897 because of lack of students, but it reopened in 1900, and it closed sometime, I'm not sure when, but sometime around 1902. And again, it's off of Mines Road up on Crane Ridge. The land was donated by Andrew Crane, who the property, of course, is named after. And it's said to be the last school district to organize and the first school district to dissolve. The average attendance, you can see why, the average attendance was 5 students. And I don't have a picture of that. I don't know what it looked like at all. Okay, now we're going to go out Tesla Road. We're going to go way, way out Tesla Road. And those of you who know Tesla, you go out, you go around this sharp turn here. And right about here then is the high point of Tesla. And then the road sharply drops down into the town, or what was the town of Tesla. Now, before you got there, right in this area and up this canyon was a little coal mining town called Harrisville. And the coal was discovered there before 1875. The school district was formed in 1875. For some reason, they didn't build a schoolhouse until 1884, but the first graduates were 10 years later in June of 1894. So what happened in that 10 years, I don't know. Now, the school closed in 1903 because they only had 3 students. Now, the school then was built for coal miners, the children of coal miners. And that was quite a going concern. There were a couple of saloons there, a hotel, and whatever else. And so I don't know how many of you ever heard of Harrisville. I had heard of it, but I never knew it was quite so large until I started looking into schools here. Now, one of the school teachers there was the Sergeant James Matson Doty, and he was a Civil War veteran. And so when I saw the name Doty as one of the teachers, I checked, and yeah, it was James Doty, the Civil War veteran. Now, let me show you, here's the town of Tesla down at the bottom. And Tesla, you have to know, is as a town was about 20 years younger than Harrisville. Coal was discovered in Harrisville about 20 years earlier. So when Tesla started, there was no school. So the school children then had to walk up this windy road, which according to the old newspapers was very, very dangerous. The school was right here in the corner of section 22. So it's 2 acres right here in the corner of the school. So the kids had to walk up and down this road. And if you know that area, it's very, very steep. And the coal then was being pulled out of Tesla. And they said in the newspapers it was very dangerous for the kids because sometimes the wagons would break loose from the horses and whatever and go careening down. So they wanted the schools built in Tesla. So that's eventually what happened. So I wanted to show you where Tesla is, in relationship to Harrisville. Okay, now, I wasn't, again, this is in private property, quite a ways off the road, but the best I can figure out, the Harrisville School was over the hill then to the left, behind you can see a road going in there. And I think it was back in this area, over in here then is where the school was, backside there. Okay, now let's go down to Tesla. So here's the town of Tesla, and here's the Pottery, and here's Carnegie. And now Tesla was the first settlement in the area. Now, Tesla, right at the bottom, when you come down the grade, very, very steep grade here, when you get down to the bottom where Corral Hollow starts to be fairly flat, right at the bottom was a settlement called Harrietville. Now, Tesla was divided up into different sections. So Harrietville was right at the bottom, and that's where the school was. Okay, but also in that area were other sections. There was Jimtown, Frytown, Chinatown, Darktown, and Treadwell Road. Treadwell was the fellow that started the coal mines there. Okay, moving on, excuse me, to the next picture is of the school. Now this school was a real, to me, looking at the building, was a real low budget operation compared to the other schools we're going to look at. And this school started in 1896. So you can see again, it's about 20 years newer than up at Harrisville. And it ran till about 1913. And that's when the mines started closing down. And the new school then, and this is it, the new school was built in 1900. Now, after the school was closed, some of you might find interesting, there was an auction of the supplies in the school. And most of the desk and other equipment were sold at auction then and bought by St. Michael's Church School. In fact, the flagpole at St. Michael's is the old Tesla flagpole. Okay, now we're going to go down the road to Carnegie, and their school looks even more low budget to me. It was built in 1905 and closed in 1912. And now the Tesla school at Harriettville was for the workers of the coal mines, where here then the Carnegie School is for the workers, the children of the workers of Carnegie Brick and Pottery Company. And also there were some sand mines there, if I remember correctly. Okay, and here's a picture then of the school kids at Harriettville, at the Carnegie School. Oh, excuse me, not at Carnegie, at the, not at Harriettville. This is down at Carnegie then. So this is a later picture then. Okay, now let's get back on Tesla Road. And we're gonna go, let's see, how am I gonna explain this? When you go out Tesla Road from town, it's pretty straight past the wineries, past Greenville's road, and you keep going, and all of a sudden there's a fairly sharp right turn and then a fairly sharp left turn. Okay, before the first turn is where the Townsend School was, and they first met, the students first met in 1875 in, excuse me, they first met in a ranch house. Then in 1875, they built this new school building on land that was donated by Daniel Smith. Now, Smith's a really well-known name here in the Valley for a number of different reasons. And then Joseph Barron. Now, they each gave 1 acre. When the school was closed, it was moved to Scenic Avenue. Now, Scenic Avenue, you may know, is way out in Springtown. And so again, it just amazes me how these buildings were picked up and on these really narrow country roads in those days, how it was moved all the way out to what's now Springtown. The school was named after the man who originally owned that property, a fellow by the name of Moses D. Townsend. So that again is out on Tesla Road. And here's the students in 1906. Some of these students are identified and are of names that are really, really well known to those of us that know much about Livermore history. One of the interesting things, in March of 1893, the students collected enough money that they bought an organ for the school. And it turns out, let's see, I think it was the Arroyo School also, as tiny as it was, it had an organ. So when they say organ, I'm not sure how big these are. They can't be terribly big since the schools were so tiny. So here's the site then of what the, where I'm pretty sure the Townsend School was. It was one room, and in 1908, the teacher was 19 years old, and she had 40 pupils. So they really loaded up the teachers. They didn't have any standards. And again, some of the schools only had 3, 4, or 5 students. So it depended upon where you were and how many kids were growing up in the area. Okay, now let's jump over. Let's go out Patterson Pass Road, past the lab. Patterson Pass Road, up over the hill, and we drop into the little valley where the town of Midway was. And in 1873, that school opened and was in operation until 1946. And then the Mulqueeny family then moved it to their ranch. Okay, so here's a picture then. We're not sure exactly when, but I do tell you, I read it, or I had a copy of a DVD of an interview of a fellow named Costa, I forget his first name, who went to school here, and his parents, all the kids at home all spoke Portuguese. And so there wasn't enough kids going to Midway School, so they're going to shut it down. And so somebody, either from the school or the school district or whatever, came and talked the parents into sending the older girls into the school. And they didn't know English at all. So they get to school, they had no clue what was going on. So they'd run home, and this Mr. Costas told us that the teacher then would run after them, grab them and pull them back to school so he'd have enough students so the school wouldn't shut down. But finally, in 1946, then it did shut down. So here's kind of, this is an old picture, but it's still kind of what the school looks like out at the Mulqueeny Ranch. They moved it there and used it for a TAC building. Okay, the plans now are to deconstruct this building, that is, take it apart and then move the material to Livermore and then reconstruct the building at Hageman Park, which is next to the Hageman Ranch on Olivina. And plans are being made now to do that, but it's going to be a big, big operation and quite expensive. So any help you can give there certainly would be very much appreciated.
Richard, who's funding
that? Okay, now move? Let's go up. Pardon?
I was saying, who's paying for that move?
The Livermore Heritage Guild.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and so again, any help would be most welcome, and any skill in the deconstruction and the reconstruction would be certainly welcome too, I'm sure. Okay, now let's go up Flynn Road. You may know Flynn Road, north and south, goes from Patterson Pass Road up over the hills, Altamonte, and then drops down to the truck stop at the top of the Altamonte. So it's a really windy, twisty road. And Highland School then opened in 1879, closed in 1905, and was on property that was donated by John G. Young. Now, we don't know exactly where the school was. We do know it was on either side of the road that goes into Daryl and Karen Sweet's ranch. So it's either on the left side or the right side. So this is the left side of the road, and you can see the windmills, or it might have been on the right side of the road that goes into the Sweet Ranch, and it would be here. Now, we can't tell, there's not enough in the pictures to let us know for sure which side it was on, but we know absolutely for sure it was at the intersection of North and South Flynn Road. Okay, now we're gonna go over to the Altamonte. Let me take a little drink here. Okay, now we're at the Altamonte. Excuse me. The first school was built in 1862, in a different spot, and we'll show you that in just a minute. The new school, and this is the new school, was built in 1894 and finally closed down again because of lack of students in 1954. And the original building, when the new school was built in 1894, the original building was sold for $37.50, we found out. Okay, the last teacher in 1954, the last teacher was Irene Nickerson Armstrong, and she had graduated from this very school then in 1911. So she had a long, long history there, as as do both the Nickerson and Armstrong families, and a number of other families that have either still live in the Altamonte or did live there in the past. Kelly's another name that comes to mind immediately. Here's an inside shot of the school. You can see the way the paneling was in the long, narrow windows and all that. The next picture shows the school in 1869. Now, the sad thing was, not too much later than this school was burned down by arsons. And that's happened to several of the schools. It's a really sad thing. You know, people try to take care of these buildings, try to maintain them, restore them, use them again. And unfortunately, arsonists have burned at least 3 that I know of. Okay, the original site, we're told, of the first Summit School then at Altamonte was about where the driveway is that goes into the Altamonte landfill. And you can see that behind there, the steps. It looks almost like a pyramid, doesn't it? So that's where the first school was. The second school then, we showed you in the picture, but here's the location where it was. And it's built on sandstone blocks, and you can still see the blocks are still there that the school was built on. Excuse me. Okay, so that's the Summit School at Altamonte, one of the last schools that still stood. Okay, now we're going to go to the bottom of the Altamonte. We're going to go to Greenville Road and the intersection with Old Altamonte Road. And the Green School was built there. Excuse me. Green School was built there in 1875. John Green sold 1 1/4 acres of his ranch to the school district for $100. And so that school was in operation until 1941, when the new school was built down at the corner of, I guess that's called a frontage road. Anyway, the old Altamonte Road, I think called Frontage Road in that area, and Laughlin Road. Now I think there's a fencing company that keeps their trucks and supplies and stuff in there. So that's the old Green School. Now again, you can see 2 front windows, the door, and 3 windows on the side. Very typical. Now some of the schools were a little bit longer, and they might have a door in the far back side. And some of the schools had an overhang over the front door, and some did not. Some of them were quite elaborate, like the one that was out at Summit School in Altamonte was a lot more elaborate than this one. Okay, here's the students, 1906 at the school. And here's where the school was. You see in the background where that car is, so that's Greenville Road, and here's Frontage Road. And it was right at this intersection, best I can figure, is where the old school was. Okay, now we're going to go north of Livermore out to May School Road. And a rancher, a farmer by the name of Carl Munch sold a corner of his farm then for $1 so that a school could be built. Now, it wasn't named Munch School, but it was named May School. And the reason seems to be that George May had 11 children that went to that school. And again, it closed it was in operation until 1960, from what I can find out. And here's a fellow we've got a picture of, William Bill McDonald. He was a teacher then, not only at May School, but also at Del Val School and Green School. And he went to Livermore Public School, the Inmate School, and then graduated from the Livermore Collegiate Institute. And here's some of the students, first, second, third grade class in the 1910s. Here's the entire school. And it looks like there's only one teacher for all those kids. And if you look at the names on there, there's all kinds of names that are super well known. Stanley, Rasmussen, Stanke, Mondot, Murray, Murphy, Brown, Ratty, Christensen. A lot of names that are well known in the history of our valley. Now this picture I don't understand. It's called Grass Fight, so I don't know if that was I don't know what that was about. If anybody knows what the grass fight was about, and why a picture was taken of it, I'd be very interested. So let's keep going. Here's there was a big push in 1975 to restore May School and to use it. And you can see it looks in pretty good shape. A lot of money, a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of man hours went into restoring the school. And it was used then for plays and dramas and so on for quite a while. Well, not quite a while, for a few years anyway, and worked out really well until in late 1979. I don't know the exact date, but it looks like late 1979. It was burned by arsonists. Not too long, well, a couple years in after it had been restored, but it was being used. It wasn't that it had been abandoned at all. But
Richard,
yes.
we have a question. We have a question in the Q&A here from Harry. He says, there must be a story about the clothing styles for students based upon parent occupations and different ethnic backgrounds. Did you come across anything about that?
I can't speak to that, but they certainly are dressed differently. You see some of the pictures we have, the little boys all have, look like coats, maybe suit coats and ties. And the girls are dressed, it looked to be in pretty fine clothes. Where on the other hand, those that were out at Carnegie and Tesla, they didn't look so well dressed. And I suspect that the income of those people, I'm guessing, I'm only guessing, I am guessing that it must have been somewhat lower than those that whose parents were ranchers or farmers and made a little bit more money. So here's May School then. It turns out this picture was taken the very day before it was burned down. And so it was completely destroyed. Really, really sad operation. The school district had bought the building. No, excuse me. The Heritage Guild had bought the building from the school district, and it spent over $5,000 restoring it then. A new roof, repairing the bell tower, and a new foundation, which you can see here in the photograph, a new foundation. And then, like I said, arsonists burned it down. So a sad, sad, sad story. Okay, now we're going to go out towards Costco to Inmate School. And if you know where Doolin Road is, right off of Doolin Road, there's the casino, the little gambling casino. And when you drive down the freeway, you can see all the cars lined up along the road there. So right at the corner of Doolin and Collier Canyon Road was the old Inmate School. And Inmate School was in operation almost 100 years, from 1870 to 1968. And in 1996, there were 74 school children in the district. Now, again, I have to remind you that each school was its own district, and they had their own rules, and that's why the schools, some look to be in much better shape. Look at the trim on this building. compared to what we saw out at Carnegie and Tesla. This looks to be a pretty fancy school compared to those. So 1896, 74 children were in the district. How many went to the school? We don't know. The next picture shows it a little bit later. And guess what? 1942, somebody burned this school down.
Gosh.
And so that was another sad chronicle on some of the people that have lived here in the valley over the years.
Richard, we have another question.
Yes.
Says, this one's from Jan and asks, when the rural schools closed because of lack of students, is that because more people were moving into town?
I think so. And then, of course, later on, and I don't know exactly what year, but later on, busing started. Mm. And again, I think the schools, I read somewhere it had to be 5 or 6, somewhere around there. If you had less than that, then the county, the county school commissioner would shut down the schools. And so they had to merge with other schools. Like Vista School became part of Mocha School District, as did Wilson School. So here's the school before it burned down. Again, that was 1942. This picture obviously is much older than that. But this is the building that replaced it in 1942. And it was used then until 1968, when this school district was shut down. And this picture was taken sometime during the 1970s. And this is what that building looks like now. And you may know the road that goes by Costco, which I can't remember the name of it right now. Anyway, that is going to go all the way through this property then, right at the base of the hills. Excuse me, not the base of the hills, on the other side of this fence, more or less, all the way to Dublin Boulevard. And so we'll have a road then all across the valley. If the freeway gets stopped for some reason, now you got Stanley, and that's it. So at least we'll have another way to get across. So that's all in the plans. When that's going to happen, I'm not sure, but I have seen plans for it. So it's going to happen. Okay, the next building, the last building we're going to talk about is the Mountain House School. And it was first the students first met in 1860. And again, like most of the schools, they started out before they had a building. They either met in the homes of ranchers or farmers. And then in the next year, 1861, one of the fellows then moved his saloon. And it was quite a distance away. He moved the saloon then to this site and turned it into a school. And then a new school then was built in 1873. And then this school that's shown in the photograph was built in 1924. And it's still being used, although there are a number of temporary buildings, because that area then is growing. And I need to get out there and take a picture of what it looks like now. But yeah, this building is still being used. Oh, the students that went to the Midway School, when Midway School was closed, they went out to Mountain House School. Okay, that is it. Now, again, I beg you, if you have information or photos of any of these schools, please contact me. And I would be so happy to see what you have and share what I have. And then again, think about, if you're interested in the history of the Valley, and if you're not a member yet, think about joining the Livermore Heritage Guild. Easy to get there, lhg.org. Okay,
we have another question here.
Yeah.
From Harry that says, was the small building south of the Duarte Garage later used by the American Indian Club and then burned, an old schoolhouse?
No, that was not. That was the Portuguese meeting house for their lodge. Yeah, that was used for many, many years. Yeah.
Can folks, if they wanted to donate to the Heritage Guild, can they do that at that lhg.org?
I'm not sure. If the Harry that's asked a couple questions is the right man, he could tell us. Harry, are you there?
One sec. Let me see if I can elevate Harry here.
Oh, it looks like Harry. There he is.
Oh, am I on television now? Okay.
Harry, you're in.
Okay. My camera isn't ticked on. No, it is. You would just send it to box 961, Livermore, California, and it just a donation goes that way. Or you can actually become a member. There's on the website, there's a membership form.
So if you wanted to donate, it's P.O. Box 961?
Yes.
I'll put that in the chat in case anyone wants it.
And you would write the check to Livermore Heritage Guild.
Lisa Clark had a question in the chat that says, have you heard about the Livermore High main building being haunted? Are there tunnels under that school?
That's a good one. And no, I don't know about it being haunted, but what I can tell you, somebody told me that they knew for sure there was a tunnel from one of the classrooms that went to the post office over on Livermore Avenue. Now, I've talked to people, assistant principal and a dean, and they said there is a trap door in one of the school rooms, but it went to a storage area underneath the school, and they've been in there and they said they didn't see any tunnel at all. So I don't know about it. If there's a tunnel, it's very, very well hidden.
All righty. Well, I don't see any more. Well, hold on. Looks like we got one more question here. Oh, Diana says she has a color photo of the Mountain House School from 2017. Would you like it emailed?
Oh, yes, please.
Okay, great. And then Harry has one last question that says there was a Livermore High School gymnasium that got moved to Maple Street from 5th Street. Or I guess was the Livermore High School gymnasium the building that got moved to Maple from 5th?
I don't know about that.
Okay.
No, I hadn't heard that.
And it looks like we have another question that just asks in general, how many schools were there, I guess, in that era? It says generally how many schools were there, but maybe in like the kind of late 1800s at that time, do you know?
Well, let's see. I forget how many we showed today. I think it was, something like 10, 11, 12, something like that. I'd have to count them up, but I think that's about how many we showed.
All right.
Now, of course, there are also schools up in the Dublin Hills. Down in Sunol, there was a school. On the, let's see, Vallecedus Road, there was a school. So there, there were other schools. Ones I showed were from kind of Livermore east and north and south, not to the west.
All right. All right. Well, thank you so much for all the info, Richard. And as he said, go ahead and you can either reply to my link if you have more info about the schools, and I'll get them to Richard, or I'll put his email in there. And we're going to go ahead and upload this to the YouTube channel. And so if you guys want to watch again or think you might have something that sounded familiar, you can revisit the video there or share with anyone else who wasn't able to join us today. So thank you so much, Richard, for helping us out and sharing all you know.
Well, thank you. Thank you, David and Kathy, for all your efforts. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody, for joining us.
Yeah,
yes.
Sorry I left. It was an accident. I don't know what happened. So yeah, we always love hearing what you have to say, Richard. Thanks so much for doing all the research.
Well, it's fun. It's interesting.
Great. All right. You guys have a great afternoon. Thanks a lot.
All righty.
Good night,
All
or
right,
good
bye-bye.
afternoon.